She was just 7. Too young to understand why her teacher's words stung deeper than bruises. Too scared to tell anyone, except her dad. When David hides a recorder in his daughter's hair, what he discovers shakes the entire school to its core. This isn't just a story about abuse, it's a story about a father's relentless love, a broken system, and a community finally waking up. What started as a whisper ends in a roar. Don't miss this fight for justice. The sun hadn't yet broken over the horizon when David Carter laced up his sneakers and quietly crept into his daughter's bedroom. 7-year-old Emma lay curled beneath her dinosaur comforter, her tiny body barely making a dent in the bed. Her once rosy cheeks were pale now, and the smile she used to wake up with had disappeared in recent weeks. David sat on the edge of the bed, brushing a lock of tangled hair from her forehead. "Rise and shine, superstar," he whispered. Emma opened her eyes slowly. Her gaze met his for a brief second before darting away. "Do I have to go to school today, Daddy?" she murmured. The question hit him like a slap. Emma loved school, loved her friends, loved Miss Ellen, her old teacher. But since the beginning of 2nd grade, something had shifted. David had noticed it in the small things. The way she clung to his hand longer each morning at drop-off, the nightmares that made her cry out for him at night, the way her laughter had become something she only did by accident. "Are you feeling sick?" he asked gently. She shook her head, fingers twisting the corner of her bedsheet. "I just don't want to go." David tilted his head. "Sweetheart, is someone bothering you? You can tell me anything." Emma looked at him, and for a brief second he saw something terrifying behind her eyes, a kind of dread no child should carry. "I'm not a bad girl, right, Daddy? Even if I don't tell you everything." David's heart cracked. He pulled her into his arms. "You're my everything, Emma. Nothing you say or do could ever change how much I love you." She rested her cheek against his shoulder, her small arms wrapped tightly around his neck. "Then promise you won't leave." He held her for a long moment. "Never." At breakfast, Emma pushed her cereal around with her spoon. She barely touched her favorite cinnamon toast. David tried to coax a smile with silly voices, even did the chicken dance, her old favorite. Nothing worked. At school drop-off, she hesitated before getting out of the car. Her eyes scanned the front entrance like it was the doorway to something dreadful. When David bent down to kiss her forehead, she didn't respond. "If I told on someone," she whispered, "would you have to go away forever?" "What? No, baby, of course not. Why would you ask that?" But she only shook her head and ran toward the doors. David sat there for several minutes after she disappeared inside. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. That evening, he watched her as she sat on the couch, clutching her favorite stuffed hippo and staring blankly at the muted television screen. It wasn't until the soft sound of her sniffling reached his ears that he realized she was crying. He sat beside her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Did something happen at school today?" Emma wiped her eyes but didn't answer. "Emma, listen to me. You're never in trouble for telling me the truth. I will always protect you, always." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Miss Wilkins says that if I talk, they'll take you away." David's stomach dropped. "Who is Miss Wilkins?" "My new teacher. She says she knows people, that they can make bad things happen." David tried to keep his face calm. "What else does she say?" Emma shook her head and buried her face in his chest. He held her, every muscle in his body tightening with anger. After he put her to bed, David called his brother Marcus, a retired cop who now worked security for a local law firm. "Something's going on with Emma," David said, pacing his kitchen, "and I think her teacher is threatening her." "You got proof?" "Not yet. But I need to find out what's happening. I can't go to the school without evidence." There was a long pause on the line. "Then get it," Marcus finally said. "Whatever it takes." David stared down the hallway toward his daughter's room. He would, no matter the cost. David sat at the kitchen table long after Emma had gone to bed, her untouched dinner plate still on the counter. The house was silent, except for the occasional tick of the wall clock and the distant hum of traffic outside. His mind churned with a father's worst fears. His daughter wasn't just afraid, she was hiding something. And whoever made her feel this way was still walking around free. He picked up his phone and dialed. "Charles," he whispered. "Yeah?" Came his best friend's groggy voice on the other end. "I need your help." There was no hesitation. "What's going on?" "I think something's happening to Emma at school. She won't tell me, but she's different. Scared. And her teacher, Mrs. Wilkins, there's something about her that doesn't feel right." There was a pause. "What are you thinking?" David's voice hardened. "I need to know what's going on when I'm not around." The next morning, David stood in front of the bathroom mirror, holding a tiny audio recording device, no bigger than a penny. It was the one Charles had handed him late the night before. Specially designed to record up to 8 hours of audio. David didn't care if it skirted legal lines. He was a father first. He carefully clipped it into the back of a sky-blue butterfly hairpin. Emma's favorite. She'd worn it almost every Monday since she was 5. When Emma came downstairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes, he knelt in front of her. "Daddy's gonna help you with your hair today." She blinked. "Really? You never do my hair." "I know," he smiled, masking the storm inside, "but I thought this clip looked perfect on my favorite girl." Her lips twitched in a faint smile, then faded again as quickly as it came. "Thanks, Daddy." He watched her from the car window as she stepped onto the school grounds, her backpack bouncing on her small frame. He prayed to God the clip stayed in place. He prayed even harder that it didn't capture what he feared. That afternoon, David picked her up early. Emma walked out of the building slowly, her face even paler than the day before. Her shoes scuffed the concrete as she dragged herself toward the car. "Hey, Princess," David said, forcing cheer into his voice. "How was school?" She gave a small shrug, eyes on her shoes. "Normal." That word stabbed him in the chest. Normal wasn't supposed to look like this. He helped her into the car, and as she dozed off in the back seat on the ride home, David gently reached for the clip and slipped it into his pocket. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep hugging her teddy bear, he sat at his desk and plugged the recording device into his laptop. His hands trembled as the file opened. 7 hours and 42 minutes of audio. He clicked play. The first few minutes were mundane. Kids chatting, a bell ringing, papers rustling. Then it started. "Emma, stand up." The voice was sharp, cold. "Wilkins." David leaned in closer, his stomach tightening. "It's your turn today." Then came the sound. A slap, loud, sickening. David froze. The breath left his lungs. "You're useless. Just like your father. No one will ever love you." He clenched his fists, white-knuckled, trying to breathe. Then Emma's voice, soft, choked. I'm sorry. You think just because you cry I'll let you off? How many times have I told you, don't look at me with those eyes?" Another pause. Then a venom-laced whisper. "If you tell anyone, I'll make sure they take your daddy away. You'll be alone forever." "Do you want that, Emma? Do you want to live in an orphanage?" A small voice. No? No? Good. Then sit down and shut your mouth." The audio stopped. David sat motionless, staring at the screen. Rage surged through him, so hot, so blinding, he thought his heart would give out right there. He reached for his phone, but his hand shook too much to dial. She had broken his daughter. This wasn't just bullying. This was systematic emotional and physical abuse. And tomorrow, the world was going to hear about it. David didn't sleep a second that night. The recording played over and over in his head, the slap, the threats, Emma's trembling voice. Morning light had barely touched the sky when he sat down at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched coffee cooling by his side. He had one mission: expose the truth, no matter the cost. At 6:15 a.m. he dialed Charles. "Hey, you up?" His voice was hoarse. "I am now," Charles muttered. "You okay?" "No. And neither is Emma. I've got the proof. It's worse than I thought." 10 minutes later, Charles was on his porch in sweatpants and a hoodie, rubbing his eyes as David played the recording. When the slap came, Charles sat up straight. By the time it ended, his jaw was clenched. "She threatened her," Charles said, stunned, "and blamed you. She told Emma the police would come for me if she ever spoke up." Charles looked at him, something igniting in his eyes. "We're not going to the school, not first. We're going higher." "You mean the cops?" "No, not yet. We don't walk into a system that already protected this monster. We go to the press." David blinked. "The press? I know someone," Charles said. "Daniel Ramsey, investigative journalist, old college friend, exposed a nursing home scandal 2 years ago. If anyone can make this public and impossible to bury, it's him." By 9 a.m., Charles had made the call. Daniel was interested. Very interested. That afternoon, David met Daniel at a dusty old diner near the bus station. Daniel was lean, graying at the temples, and had the worn face of a man who'd seen too many truths buried too deep. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Let's hear it," he said. David pulled out his phone and hit play. For 6 minutes, the diner's quiet background noise was replaced by horror. When it ended, Daniel sat back slowly, eyes narrowed. "This is gold," he said, "but also gasoline. If we light this, the school district's gonna burn." "Then light it," David replied, "because they're covering for her. I tried going to the principal. He threatened me." Daniel nodded, already taking notes. "We'll need more. Other parents, staff, witnesses, people who've heard the rumors or seen the bruises. Can you get me names?" "I can try," David said. "But most of them are scared." Daniel leaned in. "Then we make them feel safe. Once this goes public, it'll be too big to ignore." That night, David reached out to everyone he could. Some hung up, some hesitated. A few admitted they'd noticed things, but said nothing. One mother, Mrs. Lawson, agreed to talk. "I've seen Wilkins yank kids by the collar," she whispered. "But when I tried to say something, the school told me I was overreacting. Then my husband got a call at work. Anonymous complaint about his job performance. They play dirty, David." "You're not alone anymore," David promised. "We're fighting back." The next 2 days passed in a blur of interviews, phone calls, and whispered meetings in grocery store parking lots. Parents started coming forward, one after another, some with photos, others with stories that mirrored Emma's. Kids falling silent, losing weight, becoming fearful of school. Daniel compiled everything. On Friday at 7 a.m., the article went live. Silent classroom, abuse, threats, and the terrifying truth inside Westbrook Elementary. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Facebook, Twitter, local news outlets, hundreds of shares, dozens of angry comments, former students, concerned parents, teachers who'd kept quiet for too long. That evening, David picked Emma up from school. For the first time in days, her face looked a little lighter. She even whispered, "Hi, Daddy," and rested her head on his arm. When they got home, David's phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. "It's working. Police are opening a formal inquiry. Keep going. Don't let them bury this." But just as the momentum built, the pushback began. Principal Harris called David that night. "I suggest you watch yourself," Harris said coldly. "We know what you're doing." David didn't flinch. "Good. Then you know I'm not stopping." "They'll take your daughter, David. That's what happens when you create instability. She's not the one who should be afraid." He hung up. He didn't sleep that night either. But he did stand by Emma's door, listening to her breathing, promising her silently, "This ends now. I'm not just fighting for you, Emma. I'm fighting for every kid who couldn't speak up." Saturday morning brought a different kind of silence to David's house. Not the crushing kind he'd been living in, but one filled with tension, anticipation. The article had exploded. Parents who had been quiet for years were finally speaking up. Emma's story had unlocked something deeper in the community: grief, guilt, and fury. David opened his inbox to find dozens of messages. One was from a father named Ray Morris. "I believe you. My daughter had nightmares every night in Mrs. Wilkins's class. I didn't listen. Now I know why. Another came from a teacher at the school, anonymous but brave. We were told not to report Wilkins. If we did, we were risking our jobs. But I have screenshots and statements. Let me help. It was working, but not everyone was happy. Late that afternoon, David saw a black sedan parked across the street. Two men in suits sat inside. They weren't talking, just watching. He snapped a photo and sent it to Daniel. Daniel, you're making them nervous. That means you're winning. But be careful. They won't go quietly. The next morning, the local news picked up the story. A bold headline flashed across the screen. Abuse at Westbrook Elementary. Parents speak out as audio evidence emerges. A segment aired that afternoon, including audio clips of Wilkins berating Emma and blurred interviews with parents who had come forward. David's face wasn't shown, but his voice came through strong and unwavering. My daughter was threatened and abused by someone entrusted to protect her. The school knew. They looked away. Not anymore. By Sunday night, Westbrook Elementary was a war zone. District officials announced a temporary suspension for Mrs. Wilkins and a leave of absence for Principal Harris, citing a pending investigation. But no apology came, no admission of guilt, just silence, until Monday. That morning, Daniel called. They're holding an emergency school board meeting. It's not public, but I know where it is. We're going. David took the day off work and dropped Emma off at school with a kiss on her forehead and a promise. It's almost over. The board meeting was being held at a small government office on the edge of town. When David and Daniel arrived, they found nearly 50 parents and community members already gathered outside the locked doors. Some held signs, "Protect our kids." Silence equals complicity. Justice for Emma. David had never seen anything like it. Then the doors opened. The school board members, dressed in suits and tight smiles, entered the room, pretending not to notice the crowd. Daniel was allowed in as media. David was not. So he stood outside with the others, the sound of chants growing louder. After nearly 2 hours, the doors burst open again. 2 officers escorted Mrs. Wilkins through the crowd, in handcuffs. Gasps, shouts, applause. One mother cried. David stood frozen, his heart pounding. He didn't cheer, he didn't move. He just whispered, "Emma, she's safe now." But it wasn't over. A second officer walked out moments later with a pale-faced Principal Harris, trying to hide his face behind a briefcase. Daniel emerged behind them, breathless and grinning. They had no choice, he said. They couldn't bury it. The evidence, the testimonies, it was too much. They'll both be charged. David stared at him. And Emma? Daniel nodded. She's going to be okay. David exhaled slowly, the weight of months, or maybe years, falling from his shoulders. That night, he and Emma sat on the porch steps under the stars. She leaned against him, her head tucked beneath his arm. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Yeah, sweetheart." "They can't hurt me anymore?" He kissed the top of her head. "Never again." Emma smiled just a little and closed her eyes. The nightmare was ending, and for the first time, peace didn't feel like a lie. The days after the arrests felt surreal. The headlines were everywhere. National news picked up the story. Overnight, Emma's quiet voice had sparked a reckoning far beyond their small town. But for David, the victory wasn't in the headlines. It was in the little things. Like the first time Emma laughed again, really laughed, when she and David baked cookies together and she accidentally sneezed powdered sugar across the counter. It was in her drawings, no longer full of dark scribbles and hollow eyes, but smiling suns and animals wearing bow ties. And it was in her sleep. For weeks, Emma had been waking up screaming, caught in silent nightmares that left her trembling. But after Mrs. Wilkins and Principal Harris were arrested, those nights faded. She slept peacefully. On a warm Friday morning, David was invited back to the school, not to confront anyone, but to speak. The school board, under pressure and new leadership, had asked him to address the staff and parents as part of a healing assembly. He stood in front of an auditorium full of teachers, parents, and a few cautious students. Daniel stood off to the side, camera in hand. Emma, sitting in the front row next to Miss Hall, the new interim teacher, clutched her favorite stuffed rabbit. David cleared his throat and began, "I never wanted to be the face of this fight. I just wanted to be a dad. A dad who could look his daughter in the eyes and tell her she was safe. But when your child comes home different, quieter, sadder, afraid, and the people you trust to protect her turn out to be the ones hurting her, silence is not an option." He looked out over the crowd. Some were crying. Emma didn't deserve what happened to her. None of our kids did. And the truth is, there were signs, there were whispers, but fear kept people quiet. Jobs, reputations, pressure from the top. "We're done with that now." He looked toward Emma. Her big brown eyes shimmered with tears, but they were happy ones. "This school will change. It already is, because a child had the courage to whisper and a community had the courage to listen." The audience stood, applauded, cried. Emma ran to her father and hugged him in front of everyone, and for the first time in a very long time, she smiled without fear. Weeks later, the district officially launched a new child safety and accountability initiative. Cameras were installed in every classroom. A new system for anonymous student reporting was created. Teachers were given yearly trauma training. But the biggest change? Kids felt safe. David became a quiet hero in the community. Not because he was loud, but because he didn't stop. He'd fought for Emma when no one else knew how. Daniel's coverage of the case earned national recognition. He was offered a book deal, but turned it down. "This story belongs to Emma," he said. "Mrs. Wilkins?" She lost her teaching license and faced criminal charges. Several former students, now adults, came forward. Her pattern of abuse went back decades. Principal Harris resigned in disgrace and was barred from administrative work. No one defended him, not even the staff who once feared him. But perhaps the most beautiful moment came one crisp morning in spring. It was career day at the school. Parents came to talk about what they did. When David arrived, he was just going to sit in the back. But Emma tugged at Miss Hall's sleeve and whispered something. Miss Hall smiled and turned to the class. "Class, Emma has someone very special she wants to introduce." Emma stood up, her voice a little shaky but full of pride. "This is my dad. He's a protector." The room fell quiet. David swallowed a lump in his throat and walked to the front of the class. He didn't need a speech, just one sentence. "I'm just a dad, but I believe every child deserves to be safe, believed, and loved." Emma clapped. The class followed, and for a moment everything felt whole again. Epilogue. That summer, Emma was accepted into an arts and writing camp. She wrote a short story titled "The Rabbit Who Spoke the Truth." It was about a tiny rabbit who lived in a school full of wolves, but found her voice and turned the world around her into a meadow. David read it with tears in his eyes. In the dedication, Emma wrote, "For my dad, who heard me when no one else would." The world is full of systems that fail children, but sometimes all it takes is one parent, one voice, one truth loud enough to be heard. And when that happens, even the wolves learn to fear the light. What is the lesson of this story? 1. Your instincts matter. If something feels wrong, don't ignore it, especially when it comes to your child. 2. Silence protects the wrong people. Speaking up may feel risky, but staying quiet allows abuse to continue. 3. One voice can start a movement. Anthony wasn't a lawyer, a politician, or a public figure, just a dad who refused to back down. 4. Love is protection. When children know they're believed and defended, they begin to heal. 5. Systems can fail, but people can change them. This story isn't just about exposing injustice. It's about building something better. What do you think about this story? Let's comment below to discuss. And don't forget to subscribe our channel to listen to more interesting stories.